This is the fifth article written by Giorgio Agamben on the coronavirus crisis and COVID governance. It was published on March 27, 2020. It's called Reflections on the Plague. The following reflections do not concern the epidemic itself, but focus instead on what we can glean from human reactions to it. They are, in other words, thoughts on how easily an entire society surrendered to the feeling of its being plague-ridden and accepted self-isolation and the suspension of its normal life conditions, its work relations and friendships, its connection to loved ones, and to its religious and political beliefs. Why hasn't there been, as would be quite imaginable and as usually occurs in these cases, opposition? My hypothesis is that the plague was somehow already present, even if only unconsciously, and that people's life conditions were such that a sudden sign could make them appear as they really were, which is to say, as no less intolerable than a plague. And this, in a way, is the only positive dimension that we can detect in the current situation. It may be possible that people will start wondering whether their way of life was right in the first place. We should also seriously reflect on the need for religion that the situation has exposed. One sign of this need that has made itself apparent in the incessant media discourse is the terminology borrowed from the eschatological vocabulary. In order to describe this phenomenon, the media, especially the American press, obsessively resort to the word apocalypse and often explicitly evoke the end of the world. It is as if the religious need that the church is no longer able to satisfy is groping for a new habitat, finding it in what has already become, in effect, the religion of our time: science. Like any other religion, this faith can produce fear and superstition, or it can be at least used to disseminate them. Never before have we witnessed such a spectacle of divergent and contradictory opinions and prescriptions, typical of religions in times of crisis. These opinions range from the minoritarian heretical position, one that is nonetheless represented by distinguished scientists, that denies the seriousness of the phenomenon, to the orthodox dominant discourse that affirms this same seriousness and yet differs within itself often radically on the strategies for facing it. And as always happens in these cases, some experts, or so-called experts, manage to gain the approval of the monarch, who, as in the times of religious disputes that divided Christianity, sides with one current or the other according to his own interests, before subsequently imposing his measures. Finally, another element to consider is the evident collapse of any commonly shared belief and faith. We might say that people no longer believe in anything, except in a bare biological existence which should be preserved at any cost. But only tyranny, only the monstrous Leviathan with his drawn sword, can be built upon the fear of losing one's life. For all these reasons, once the emergency, the plague, is declared over, if it ever is, I do not believe that it will be possible, at least for those who retain a modicum of lucidity, to return to our previous lives. And perhaps this is the most dispiriting thing we can see today, even if it is the case that, as has been said, quote, "only for the sake of the hopeless ones have we been given hope." Close quote.